Bom dia, gente. This is Frederick from Porto, Portugal. Today, I would like to talk about something that is a little bit more probably heavy, or that probably will generate some discussions, which I think it's also good. It's about the housing crisis and the influence of foreigners in Portugal. I'm very happy to hear your opinion about this, but please stay civilized. If you have other opinions, if you have other facts and figures, please present them, but please stay civilized. We will erase anything that is going out of hand or it's hate speech or something like this. So let's first define what is the problem, or what is the housing crisis. I don't know what the official definition of a housing crisis is, but the problem from my point of view is that a lot of people in Portugal and more people cannot cope with the rising rental prices. There's also a shortage of rental properties in Portugal, and due to the increasing costs in construction, more people and more people having problems also with the rising interest rate in the last couple of months and years, have made it quite difficult for many people to either rent or to buy a property. Is the housing crisis something that is a Portuguese problem? It is a Portuguese problem, but it's a problem that exists around the world. In most modern Western societies, there's a housing problem. You have problems, for example, in Canada, in the United States, in Germany, in UK, in France. So coping with rising construction and rental problem, it's something that it's globally affecting societies and citizens, and not just in Portugal. So let's look at the Portuguese market. And when you look at the Portuguese market, the housing market, it's a kind of intriguing why there is a housing problem. First of all, if you look at the 10 years period, more or less, we have some figures from 2011 to 2021. There was a census being done. But after the financial crisis, a lot of people left the country. And if you look at Portuguese as it is now, there are not more living people in Portugal than there used to be 10 years ago, more or less. And there were even built more houses, or there are more houses in the market than 10 years ago. Portugal is also one of the countries that has the highest ratio of housing per household. There are around 4.1 million households, and there is a total of 5.97 million properties for housing, around 6 million. So that's one of the highest rate, even if you compare it also to the entire population. There are around 10 million Portuguese living in Portugal, not just Portuguese, but people living in Portugal. Compared to 6 million properties, that's quite a big number. It's one of the highest, I think the second highest rate in the world. So potentially there's enough housing for everybody in Portugal. So if there are enough housing, 6 million properties for living, so there shouldn't be any housing problem or housing crisis in Portugal. One of the main problem is that a large number, almost 1/3, 1.8 million of these properties are not accessible for the market. A lot of these properties are not around 1.1 million second houses or second dwellings. So this means that the family already has a house or an apartment. They own another property and they're not putting it into the rental market. They use it maybe as a vacation home. And there's around 700,000 properties in Portugal, which is quite obvious if you take a look in Porto or Lisbon, especially in Porto. There are many buildings, even downtown, that need rehabilitation. You cannot use them, or they vacant, which is a big problem because almost 1/3 of these properties that exist in Portugal are not accessible. Next to the shortage of properties that are actually for renting, there's another development that has to be considered. Portugal lost a lot of population after the financial crisis, and the government tried to fill this up with immigrants. They started a lot of programs, tax benefits, all kind of things for people, also Portuguese that returned. Everybody who didn't live in Portugal for more than 5 years got tax benefits, and people returned and or started a new life in Portugal, which led to a huge increase also in rental demand. There was also a huge increase in single households. There are almost 160,000 more single households in Portugal. Most of them also rent. So the gap when many Portuguese left was filled with people that came to Portugal and started renting properties. So there's an increase in the population, or people are migrating to Portugal. But who are these people? Are these all the rich people from the United States, for example, or a lot of Germans or French? No, it's not. I think it's sometimes a preconceived, complete preconceived. There are around 9.8% or roughly 10% non-Portuguese people living in Portugal. Just to read you the numbers, and then you can see, okay, out of this 10%, who are these people? Brazilians, 29.3, by far the highest population which came to Portugal. You have 5%, no, 6% from the United Kingdom, Cape Verde 5%, Italy 4%, India 4%, Romania 4%, Ukraine 4%, France 4%, I'm rounding, Angola 4%, Chinese 3%, Nepal 3%, Guinea 3%, Spain 3%, Germans 3%, São Tomé 2%, País Baixos 2%, Bangladesh 2%. It's a big mixture with a lot of nationalities. So it's not just that the rich Western countries are coming to Portugal. I think it's even a healthy mixture, and people from the United States didn't even show up from in the list. So I think it's a total preconceived, all these Americans coming in and buying. So from my point of view, healthy mixture coming to Portugal. The figures that I have are from 2022. Back then, and I'm pretty sure this has dropped in the last year or in 2024. 12% of the investments were done by foreigners or non-Portuguese, and 88% were done by Portuguese. Why do I think the number has gone down? First of all, the tax program, the NHR, was stopped last year. There was a big confusion about the Alojamento Local, which is also interesting for foreigners investors. And there were some stops concerning the visas. For example, the golden visa, which we will talk about in a few seconds, was also stopped. But still, the entire mixture made it less attractive. Also, with the Ukrainian crisis and all the things going on in the world, the investment has probably, or for sure, has gone down from foreigners in Portugal. So, is it the fault of Alojamento Local that a lot of people don't have access? If you look at the numbers, there are around 120,000 Alojamento locales in Portugal. If you look at the entire market of potentially available properties of 6 million, it's 2% of the entire market. It's 120,000. And I don't know the ratios, but if you've been in an Alojamento Local, maybe at the Algarve, a lot of this property, a single house with a pool, they're not really accessible to a normal family, even if they were to rent. And especially in the cities like Lisbon and Porto, there are a lot of Alojamento Local that are not made for permanent living. There are small rooms, 20-25 square meters, maybe a kitchenette, no place to park, no balcony, you cannot really wash things there. So it's not that this 2% or this 120,000 are completely well done and perfect for permanent housing. I don't know, even if it's the 60,000, then we talk about 1%. Of course, if you look at the cities, there's a high ratio, but even if all the properties went into the housing market, would this get rid of the problem? Definitely not. Probably would cause other problems. I'm a person that is in big favor of Alojamento Local. I think the government made a very poor job regulating things right from the beginning with clear rules, maybe with a cap in licenses according to percentages or even in absolute numbers. But the vacation industry, it's so important in Portugal. And if you didn't have Alojamento Local, what would happen? A lot of chains, hotel chains would make the money. I think it's a great option to also let the society, the normal people, participate in the income that comes from Alojamento Local. But definitely also this is something, but that's my personal point of view. If you have a different point of view, please leave it in the comments. But I think it's a good way to participate. It needs to be regulated, but it's definitely not the main reason or big problem in the housing market. That's my personal point of view. The number is way too small. Most of the apartments are not adequate for permanent housing. So if you want to solve the housing crisis, you have to look at other things, but not just at Alojamento Local, and not also then because strangers are staying in Portugal for vacations. Another topic that is always discussed, it's something that is not up to date anymore because the so-called golden visa doesn't exist anymore. But this is also something that was highly discussed, and they were to blame for everything. If you compare it to the overall number of sales, and not everybody who went for a golden visa also went for real estate. There are other ways to get the golden visas. You can also invest into cultural events. You can also invest into investment funds. But even if you have the 1,900 in having invested into real estate, compared to the 167,000 real estate sales that were done per year last year, did it have an influence? If you look at the media sometimes, oh my God, the golden visas investors, they're running around buying everything. There were more focused places, for example, Port and Lisbon. So there was an influence, but on the overall market, did the golden visa have a detrimental bad influence with 3.5% of the entire sales? I think not. If you think, please leave it also in the comments, but the number is way too low to really have a significant impact on the overall prices in Portugal. What are the reasons this 1.9 million properties are not accessible? I think there's probably not a single reason. There are many ruins there that need rehabilitation, and there are many, especially in the urban areas. But this costs, and if the family doesn't have the money, they could either sell or just leave it as it is, and probably they prefer not to invest the money because we're talking about a lot of money. Many people also are a little bit scared of the tax that you have to pay. You pay, if it's a short-term contract, you pay up to 28% until 3 years, which is quite a lot compared to other countries. Tenants' rights, they exist. It's not so easy to get rid of a tenant. I mean, if you compare it maybe to other countries like the United States, eviction is quite easy, but compared to other European countries, I think Portugal is normal, but still, it's not a piece of cake. There are several reasons, but I think that's probably one of the things that the government has to tackle if they would like to have more rental in the market. So how can you battle the housing crisis? It definitely exists in Portugal and other countries. Definitely not just by blaming foreigners. That's easy. They tried it with the golden visa. Did they have a detrimental impact on the market with the 3.5% peak in 2023? I don't think so. Alojamento Local, 2% of the market, definitely higher in bigger cities. It needs to be regulated, but putting them into the market will not solve the problem. The main issue from my point of view is to tackle the almost 2/3 of the properties that are in the market, 1.8 million, that are either vacant or a ruin or vacation property for a family, which is also not so easy because they also represent a big majority of the votes. And if they don't want to be forced, which the old government tried, they vote against you. So maybe there are ways. If you have ideas, please leave them in the comment. That's it from my side. I hope you liked the video. I tried to shed a bit of a light and defending a little bit also strangers in Portugal with the investment. If you like the video, please follow us and like it. And don't forget, stop surviving, start living. See you in Portugal.